And here we are in Alnmouth, sorry, not in Alnmouth, in Tynemouth, here with Allan Fairley, who is the Managing Director of Accenture's UK Policing and Security.
Public safety
activity. And here we are on Tynemouth, not Alnmouth. Tynemouth Beach, with some significant water activity going on here with the lifeguard flag, flying. Camera angle not quite right there. I think that might have been showing too much of the sky rather than the what looks to be a lovely day. And here for the next half hour or so we're going to walk a little along the beach. Allan, you've as now Accenture's Managing Director in the areas that we've mentioned, you've worked in this area for a number of years. Your background though is as an engineer in broadly aeronautics, I think. So
yeah, defence electronics.
Defence electronics.
Yeah.
How on earth did you, X number of years ago,
many,
I'll leave you to fill in the blank if you so wish, X number of years ago, move from an engineering profession into what was policing and now home affairs?
Pure chance, actually. I mean, if I go back many years ago when I left school, university was never on the cards. So I left school and joined a company. I got an apprenticeship, an electronic technician apprenticeship with a company called Ferranti in Edinburgh, and it was a defence electronics company. So I spent 4 years doing my apprenticeship, and then spent a year time serve as an engineer. But at that time, I was doing the same thing day in, day out, with the same people, working the same jobs, and I thought I just can't do this for the rest of my career. So the guy I worked for at the time, very helpfully, noticed I was getting a bit restless and suggested I go to university and he would sponsor me. So I did that. Spent 4 wonderful years
University to study what?
Engineering.
Of course, for somebody who wants to get out of engineering,
that was the only thing I could use to get into. I knew I needed a degree to get a better job, and the only degree I could do, given my experience and qualifications at the time, was engineering. But I did that purely to get out of engineering, which is a bit weird.
Well, but it's worked.
Well, it has. It's worked fantastically.
So there you were doing this engineering degree, very kindly sponsored, but by somebody who sounds to be a wonderful boss, but also an understanding company.
He was a visionary. Professor Stephen Day, great guy, and helped me through university. And unfortunately for Ferranti, fortunately for me at the time, they almost went bust and got bought over by a bigger company. But in doing so, that released me from all the obligations that I had through my sponsorship, which meant I was free to look elsewhere, which is exactly what I wanted. So entirely fortuitous timing. You're being released from these obligations in no way was a contributor to the demise or the near demise of Ferranti. So your conscience is entirely clear. And then so from there, there you are. You've been released from these ties that there were from Ferranti sponsoring you. Yeah.
Incidentally, I need to ask you en route here because we've come to a sort of decision point.
We will go up this way.
We are going up that.
Yeah.
We'll continue a little further here. So, released from these ties.
Yeah. So released from the ties. The guy I was sharing a flat with at university at the time, he had gone to what was a milk round presentations, which is where all the employers go to the universities and try and entice the students to join them. And he'd been there, came back into the flat with a brochure from a company called Anderson Consulting, and I just happened to be in the kitchen making a coffee, absent-mindedly just picked up the brochure and flicked through it and had a light bulb moment. It was one of those things where you go, that's what I want to do. Didn't know much about it, but I thought that's going to be good. So
of serendipity,
pure luck,
pure luck.
And I applied, and fortunately was offered a position and joined them on the 7th of October 1991, so it's almost exactly 30 years ago.
Here we are, I think it's the 1st of August that we are recording this, so it won't appear on Policing Insight for a number of weeks. So again, serendipitous, is there such a word as serendipitously? Anyway, there is now. This may be published at or around the 30th anniversary.
Yes. Yeah, indeed.
So you joined what was then Anderson Consulting.
Yeah.
And somehow ended up in policing advice.
Yeah, so I did a range of different roles, as is the way with most consultancies. But I mainly worked for public sector clients. DSS as was, DWP as it's now, the revenue is HMRC, and the whole raft of different clients, mainly doing large-scale systems implementation type activities. And then about probably 7 years ago, we had no presence really in the policing market space, and it was an area where we thought actually there might be something in this.
And Anderson Consulting renamed as Accenture
in 2001 as Accenture, and we so about 7 years ago we thought, right, let's take a look, and I was asked to see whether I could try and make a fist of it and build a bit of a business within what was then just policing.
Can we just go up here? I think we can, can't we?
What was then just policing.
Yes.
And since then, I mean, it's been absolutely fascinating. It really is. It's a brilliant marketplace to work in, for all sorts of different reasons. For some, you know, it can be the most frustrating marketplace in the world, but also the most rewarding marketplace in the world when you see the difference that you can make to, you know, the men and women who just want to, you know, protect their communities.
Do you know, you and I think are on precisely the same page here. It's, right. It is the policing, criminal justice, home affairs area can be enormously frustrating.
Oh, yeah,
but it's enormously rewarding as well. Yeah, now you're not going to
we're going to go on that way.
Good, I'm glad you're not going to send us up those stairs. So there you are. You've joined Anderson Consulting, now Accenture. You've progressed, you've come to focus on policing and now home affairs as well. Accenture, I believe, has done some very significant pieces of work for the likes of West Midlands Police, the Metropolitan Police, the Police Federation of England and Wales, and indeed others. So perhaps filling in a little bit about, I know Accenture has more than those three clients, but the clients you've worked with, at the risk of your choosing or asking you to choose one experience, but what are the memorable positive moments, moment or moments in that work that you've done?
There's, as you would expect, there's been a number of them. I mean, first and foremost, I think the work that we've done with West Midlands over the last six or 7 years now has to be up there with, you know, in terms of sense of pride of what we've achieved together with the force. It's just brilliant, you know, absolutely brilliant. We've completely turned the force around from where it was to what it is now, which is one of the most efficient, best forces in the UK, and we've played a significant part of that. Not just us. I mean, the force in there. There's been other suppliers in there as well, but we've played a significant part of that. And I know that everybody who's been involved with that account internally within Accenture has a massive sense of pride over what we've both achieved. And similarly, actually, with the Police Federation, you know, six years ago was it? The nominating report slated the organisation.
So this was at a time when the Police Federation's reputation was in trouble,
it was
in tatters. It was in tatters. And there was a I forget now the precise sequence, but I believe there was a government interdict that the Federation needed to go through a process of examination and reform if they were to have their funds continuing.
That's correct,
And so Accenture then were commissioned by the Police Federation to undertake that work.
It was a competitive procurement process. all around implementing the 36 recommendations from the Normanton report, and effectively transforming the entire organisation. And again, to be fair to the people who were leading the organisation at that point in time, they realised that there had to be a massive change. And it was an organisation that wasn't used to change. But with their help, we set about implementing all of the 36 recommendations and really turning the organisation around into what it is just now, which is a very well-run professional organisation. And to play a part in that and to see that success, looking back, it just gives you a great sense of pride.
The federation, for those from overseas less familiar with the bodies here in England and Wales, and indeed wider British Isles, Federation represents some, I think it's 120 to 130,000 police officers from the rank of constable up to chief inspector. And I think, slightly nervous about saying this, but I believe also now represents specials, or at least there is a discussion about that. So 130,000, it's a very significant body in there. So that's something about the satisfaction that you've had in your work. But let's now consider perhaps the frustrations. But let's do so. Let's do so in a constructive manner. As we look out again across this wonderful Tynemouth panorama, which actually for this I'm going to cross over to this side. So so just whilst the houses here are a delight, I think I'm going to go for the coast as your backdrop. So the frustrations, and looking at them positively, what might be done better to provide policing in England and Wales, potentially policing across the British Isles, with a more robust, more productive future.
I mean, there's things that I'll say that have been said many times before, and this is part of the reason why it's so frustrating, because lots and lots of people talk a good game, but turning that into action hasn't quite happened yet. It's starting to happen. We are starting to see signs, but it's things like the fact that you've got 43 forces in England and Wales, for example, that do things differently in many different ways, not just operationally, but from an IT perspective. That's hugely frustrating, because as an outsider looking in, you can see massive benefits that could be had from joining up and doing things more on a national basis, not just for saving money's perspective. I mean, yes, you would save money by doing so, but actually getting better outcomes, facilitating interoperability between forces, sharing data and information between forces, which sounds like it's the most common sense thing in the world to do. It's really hard. It's really hard at the moment, and that's not just because of technology. It's also, we'll go down this way, it's because of politics, people, agendas, points of view. It's just frustrating, so massively frustrating.
These are topics that have been explored regularly over the past several years. I forget now the precise title, but there was a recommendation, there was a report that the Home Office commissioned at least 10, I think probably 15 years ago, looking at police force structure in England and Wales, that recommended going down to 7, maybe 8 regions. And although my memory is a little hazy on the detail, I suspect that they were making the same arguments in that as you are making now. So what, if anything, is actually going to make it happen? Or is it completely lost cause?
It's not a lost cause. It absolutely is not a lost cause. And I think I mentioned that there's certain things starting to happen that give us cause for hope. The fact that you've now got an organisation, Police Digital Services, used to be Police ICT Company, whose sole purpose is to try and create national solutions, right? So that police forces can sign up to them. Now that is a massive step forward. It sounds a small step, but it's a massive step forward. The fact that they've got funding, they've got the agreements from all sides, they've got PCCs, they've got chiefs involved, they've got agreement from the Minister, and all suppliers are looking forward to that as well. So that is a massive step. The fact that you're seeing some chiefs openly stand up in conferences and the like, and openly say that we now need to cede sovereignty in areas like IT. You know, that again is a massive step forward.
That certainly is a massive step forward.
Yeah. So there are signs that are happening now, and it just, frankly, it just has to happen. It just has to happen.
Well,
if it doesn't, policing is very, very quickly going to become not a lost cause. It's going to become an even more difficult game because
the money is tight. It always has been tight. We've been touching on some of the opportunities before the recording started of where further monies might be spent if available, useful. But there is still a significant there's significant obstacles to that moving forward. You've touched on some of them. The political side, the vested interest side, if I can put it that way. You know, let's look at the governance briefly before we return to other opportunities. The governance structure, where there aren't 43 police and crime commissioners, but there are 43 different governance structures. There are police and crime commissioners being providing the governance for forces. We've had the likes of Dorset and Devon and Cornwall, where the merger, the marriage between the two, you know, it was at the point, and I'm not going to suggest which was the bride and which was the groom, but you know, they were at the altar, and then one decided actually that was not going to be the way forward. So.
And we've seen that in other...
And we've seen it elsewhere. We've seen it with West Mercia and Warwickshire and indeed others. So does it not simply need, simply is the wrong word, the Home Office, which seems to be taking a more active stance in some of the near operational matters, certainly the governance of UK policing. Does it not need simply the Home Office to say this is what we're doing? And more than bang heads together, but just bang bodies together.
I can't remember the last Home Secretary that tried that. I think it was the 70s or 80s, and it cost him his job. That's a very, very brave Home Secretary that tries that. So the jaw rather than war. By persuasion rather than by. If you look at the way that the Home Office used to try and manage policing was they used to try and be more directive in terms of how they govern things. Now what they've said is, look, we tried and didn't want you are telling us that you know how to do policing, you know how to do governance of policing, so you try it. They didn't see the results they wanted over the last 10, 15, 20 years, and that's hence the introduction of PCCs, to try and instill some level of governance and financial control.
And we could have a debate about the success or otherwise of PCCs, exactly, which would last us
but that seems
the rest
to be,
of the morning.
Giving out more accountability as opposed to taking it back into the centre.
So there's an opportunity for forces, the 43, and more indeed, to work more closely together. Are there other opportunities that strike you that are waiting, you know, ripe to be plucked from the tree, or even not necessarily ripe, so not the fully ripened tomato, but you know, there to foster, to cultivate, and to look forward to benefiting from?
If you look at the way that the world is going, we look at the way that the world is going, it's all, you know, and technology is driving innovation and driving development of pretty much every aspect of everybody's life. That policing needs to take advantage of the technologies that are available. Technologies are there now, so policing can do that to help counter some of the bad stuff you see through online or digital enabled crime.
The criminals are themselves taking advantage of technology.
Exactly,
the growth of cybercrime.
Correct.
Very substantial, very significant. And
so policing need to start doing more to try and counter that by using the technology to help them in that. And there's lots of technology available that can do that. There's lots of ways they can introduce new technology that would give them more powers to track it down and stop crime happening in the first place. And you know, so cut it off upstream, stop it happening in the first place. There's I hate to use the word predictive technologies, but proactive, I guess, policing is what I would call it.
Well,
now, I know there's a lot of ethics and data and all that sort of stuff, but it can be done. It will be done in the not too distant future. I'm convinced by that.
That's an area where Accenture and indeed companies, similar competitors, have an absolute wealth of experience that's simply not internally available to policing, despite best intentions. The experience you have through, I can't remember the full expansion of AI, but the intelligence side. Oh, thank you. That's I was struggling with that. Artificial. Yeah, I've clearly started to forget acronyms rather than remembering them. That side, you know, where you within the firm Accenture, both nationally and internationally, for commercial and public sector, I imagine that there is a wealth of opportunity there.
Huge.
And as a member of the public, I feel more vulnerable to online fraud than I am to burglary. So how does a firm like Accenture, or in this case Accenture, go about persuading the powers that be to you know, bring you on as a partner, commission your services, make best use of the expertise that you and colleagues have?
A lot of it is about trying to understand some of the reasons why people are not just accepting this new technology with open arms. You know, there are some concerns, some valid concerns, that have to be taken into account, and there's no point in us.
Yes. Well, we're tempted to go into that restaurant there, but
the restaurant there is actually the restaurant there.
Is it? It's,
there's no inside seating.
It's
and this is one of the nicest restaurants.
It looks superb. We have to carry on though. That's there's a queue. We can't get in at the moment anyway. So,
but yeah. So we need to understand people's point of view rather than just coming in and saying do that, which would just be wrong. Okay. And in fact would do more harm than it would good. So we need to take time to really understand what the concerns are, really get to the bottom of what the concerns are, and help others understand the power, the benefits, the value that could be had from the technology, so that you can both see each other's point of view, and that way you can hopefully try and reach some kind of compromise where we can start using the technology, albeit with you know, ethical reasons to do so, making sure that people's concerns over, you know, this time we are going to go.
Yeah, you're taking me up this time. I've just spent the last 2 days walking Hadrian's Wall, and my legs are.
We'll take it easy.
We'll take it easy going up here. So, the expertise that Accenture and similar firms have, the opportunity. Certainly, looking back over my 30-year career in policing, there have been times when policing has felt that actually why not develop the expertise in-house rather than look to expensive, forgive me, but you know, certainly compared to internal development, the significant investment that is needed from working with one or more private sector suppliers. No, I think that's changed in my 30 so far years, in that there is much more of an acceptance now.
There is, although it seems to be cyclical. It's starting to shift.
Which way is it shifting?
Yeah,
back to organisations wanting to try and build capabilities in-house so they can be more self-sustainable. Now, the challenge they've got is the kind of skills that they're trying to build are very valuable in the marketplace. And try as they might, public sector organisations can't offer the kind of salaries that is available for people with those skills elsewhere. So what happens is, the danger is, of course, you build the skills and then the people that you spent time nurturing and training up get lured away for much higher salaries elsewhere. And you, with an Accenture, the deep knowledge specialists, you can maximise their deep knowledge through policing, through other sectors, other assignments, making the most. I'm beginning to sound a bit like a salesman for Accenture. I will have to row back from this in a second.
Keep going.
But it's about that in-depth experience and leveraging it to best effect.
Yeah.
Again, referring to one of my pet frustrations, the online fraud side, very, from my point of view, welcome decision to change from the action fraud approach.
Yes.
There is so much money there that is going to organised crime that there must be very substantial opportunities working with finance sector, insurance sector and others, to mutual benefit.
Telcos and
But how much is there much exploration of that, or is it?
There is, there is. There's a lot going on at the moment. So illicit finance, that sort of stuff, where you see a lot of collaboration with banks, with telcos, because a lot of this stuff gets done online. A lot of this stuff is digitally enabled. So the telcos know, because they can see the data, they're moving the data around. Financial institutions know because they can see it in their records. So there is a lot of collaboration going on at the moment between organisations like the National Crime Agency, for example, and other organisations, just to try and figure out.
Well, that's very encouraging.
How to get on top of this.
That's very encouraging. Do you know? We've reached here. What is? I do know. I'm not familiar with the castle here behind us.
King Edward's Bay.
Let's remove the rubbish bin from the shot. The ice cream van looks particularly attractive. Tell us. Do you know much about this?
Not that much. Only that it's called King Edward's Bay.
Yes.
That's, I think, an old monastery or something like that.
Okay, just in front here by the ice cream van.
Yeah. The ice cream van, I think, is new. It's modern day rather than.
It's a very attractive option, and I'm hoping we'll head up there shortly.
We will do that.
But look, we've had what for me has been a fascinating conversation. As you will know, and others may know, on each of these policing friendship tour walks, I make a point of asking the individual I'm walking with about their own charitable interests, and ask them to nominate one or a couple of charities that you would like to raise the profile of through Policing Insight and through this tour of mine. So what charity or charities have you?
There's two that immediately spring to mind. One is Cops, Care of Police Survivors, which is a fantastic charity, and we've been helping them recently. We Accenture have been helping them recently with their website. They're a smashing bunch of guys in there who just want to do the right thing. So that's one, and the other one is one called Embrace, which is a charity that it does a whole bunch of good for families and children who have been victims of crime, who are some of the most in need people, and they've got a wonderful charity set up that does a whole bunch of good for these kids and the families who have been victims of crime. So
we'll be sure.
That's the two.
We'll be sure to mention those on the material that we publish on Policing Insight shortly. Alan, we're sort of at the point where I'm never quite sure whether to shake somebody's hand or not, as at least here in the UK the pandemic seems to be ebbing. We keep our fingers crossed on that. Yeah. Consider your hand shaken on this occasion, and thank you so much for your comments. It's been a delight here in Tynemouth, and I think that there's an ice cream over there with our
your name on it.
Thank you again.
You're very, very welcome.